Hello. I was searching through some of the stuff I've got stored in my house attic for some components for one of the other projects. When I came across this, it's another bit of electronics history. It's a Braun professional Flashgun, camera flash. From, I think it was built around mid-1960s. It is transistor based. That's the main power unit, or main inverter unit with the big capacitors in it that converts from around 8 volts to a few hundred volts and stores the energy. It's about 3/4 capacitors and 1/4 of the electronics board. It uses germanium transistors. I think it's a pair of OC26s, if I remember right, for the power stage of the inverter, and AC108 signal transistors. The bottom section is supposed to be the battery box, which when I got it, which was I think probably about 1968, 1970 from the school photographic club. The teacher that ran that used to find and sell items to the students. I think I paid 2 shillings for it. It had lead acid batteries in it. There were two cell batteries, which actually had small windows in the sides, like level tubes in the sides, with floats in to show the state of charge as the specific gravity of the electrolyte change. Different floats would lift, so you got an indication of charge state. Anyway, so this thing is, I've had it over 50 years, over 60, well, it's around 60 years old. I've got a couple of wires on it to power it, which are connected to the bench supply, 7.5 volts, and it still works. Let me just turn the light out. I don't know if you can hear that then. It charges up. The inverter automatically cuts out when the capacitors reach sufficient voltage, and it'll cut back in every so often just to top them up if it's not being used. So it's got some level of automation and control to it, rather than just the inverter running all the time. So it's saving the batteries. The flash unit itself can be detached either from the bracket and be used on a separate tripod mount underneath. It's just got a normal camera and tripod screw in the bottom. Or more commonly, I would think, depending on the use. I mean, some setups use the flash a distance from the camera, some use it mounted on the camera. But the basic mounting on this would quite often, and when I used it, it was using the bracket there straight onto the bottom of the camera. So the flash gun is at the side of the camera. Then there's a cable that plugs into the side of the flash head, which, with a film camera or a camera that's got the right connector built in, a little coaxial socket type connector, which this has not. This is just what I picked up as an example. This would need an adapter on the hot shoe to take this socket, which you can get. Then the flash will be triggered when you press the shutter. Just remove it from there, not to damage anything, leaving stuff around. And as I say, it still works perfectly. There's a switch on the side, also on the back, to select the power level, half or full power. So it uses 2 different banks of capacitors, or the switches between capacitors, depending if you want a dim flash or a bright, well, dim, a not so powerful bright flash or an extremely bright flash. And there is also a manual trigger button on the flash itself. That's just for testing or discharging it, or for other applications if you've got a long exposure shutter possibly. Just to give you an idea, I'll put that's 4 layers of paper. And you can probably hear the inverter kicking again. Got quite a definite whine. And it's just stopped, it's just fully charged at that. That's ready for another shot. So, as you can see, it's some definitely vintage electronics. It's 60 years old in round figures, and still working pretty much as good as new, other than the lead acid battery, which obviously degrade with time and only lasts a few years. When I was using it, I put some NiCads in it soon after I got it, because the lead acid battery just didn't hold any significant charge for any length of time. But I took those out again because they started to corrode before I put it away. I have had it out and just put it on power for a while, a couple of times since, just to keep the capacitors in reasonable condition and stop them degrading too much. When I first powered it up to do this, the inverter was only cutting out for about 10 seconds, but by now it's staying out for minutes, so they've recovered very quickly. And they seem to be fine. It's certainly got all the power there. And as you can hear, it goes. There's quite a pop generator. I think it's the thermal shock, if you like, from the energy released in the flash tube, the xenon tube, and that produces the sound. And I've just accidentally turned my computer back on. I put it to sleep so you could hear the noise. But yeah, that's just a xenon tube, same as used in disco strobe type things. I can just hear the inverter just kick back in just for a few seconds, just to top it up, because nothing happened to it. Anyway, oh yeah, that's a little calculator scale, like slide rule type thing, rotary slide rule type thing for calculating exposures. There's nothing much else to show on it. So the flash head plugs in there, and those latches hold the battery box on. So the connector is a 3-pin connector in the base, and if it had got the original charger, which I've never had, the charger can either plug in to the battery or be used as a power unit direct to the flash. But, it's just a bit of history. The only thing on it that's not right, which this is going to be a separate video about, is the strap has been coiled up in a box. I mean, I haven't touched this in 20 years, I think, since I moved house. So the strap's been coiled up in a box, and it is getting very, very dry. It feels like paper. It's, yeah, I think if it got any strain on it, it would be very brittle. But other than the surface slight cracking just where it's kind of painted in the first place with a black finish, it seems undamaged. And I wanted to do an article on, or a video should I say, on restoring and caring for leather, whether it's vintage stuff or new, like belts, boots, shoes, coats, whatever, because I get an impression a lot of people don't understand it now. I mean, it used to be one of the things decades ago that everybody automatically knew or learned as a child how to maintain leather equipment and clothing and whatever. But there's not a lot of information about it now, not a lot of knowledge, so that's something I will carry on with in the next video. Anyway, that's it. That's the Flashgun. I'll turn it off again now. That's good for another few years before it needs powering up again. And thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you like this type of material.